When did self-love become a brand? When did healing turn into an aesthetic? When did putting yourself first start sounding more like, I don't care who I hurt as long as I'm happy? We were told self-love would set us free, but what if it's quietly chaining us to ourselves? What if the movement that was meant to heal us is actually making us more disconnected, self-centered, and emotionally fragile than ever before? Because somewhere along the way, self-love stopped being about accepting yourself and started being about worshiping yourself. And that is where everything began to rot. Before we go deeper, take a moment, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below, because this isn't just another video that tells you to love yourself more. We're going to dig into the psychology of how the self-love culture has turned into quiet narcissism and why it's leaving so many people empty, lonely, and blind to their own delusion. Watch till the end, because once you see this pattern, you'll start noticing it everywhere, in relationships, online trends, even in your own reflection. And when you're done, check out our previous video, The Psychological Manipulation Behind the Life You Think You Chose. It'll show you how society engineered your idea of success and freedom. Links in the description. Trust me, you'll understand yourself on a whole new level after watching that. Let's start with something uncomfortable. We've turned healing into a performance. Self-love, in its truest sense, was meant to be a quiet act of compassion, not a declaration of superiority. But scroll through social media today, and you'll see a very different story. Self-love is no longer about inner peace. It's about image curation. It's not about being at ease with who you are. It's about convincing others that you are. The ancient philosophers warned us about this. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," but the modern world has twisted that. We've replaced self-examination with self-obsession. We no longer look inward to understand, we look inward to inflate. And this inflation is subtle. It disguises itself as empowerment. It speaks the language of healing, but its energy is control. We say, I'm setting boundaries, but sometimes what we really mean is, I'm punishing people for not serving my ego. We say, I'm focusing on myself, but deep down we mean, I've built walls so high, even love can't reach me. We say, I know my worth, but often we mean, I've confused confidence with entitlement. Psychology calls this covert narcissism, a quieter, more socially accepted form of self-centeredness that hides behind self-care language. It's not loud like grandiose narcissism. It's subtle, it's emotional, and it feels justified. Because unlike traditional narcissism, covert narcissism thrives on moral superiority. It's when you believe your pain gives you a pass to stop caring about others. It's when you use your trauma as armor, not to protect yourself, but to attack anyone who challenges your worldview. Dr. Craig Malkin, a Harvard psychologist, described this perfectly. He said, narcissism exists on a spectrum, and we all have some of it. But the problem begins when self-love becomes self-obsession. And that's exactly where we are now. We've glamorized the me era so much that empathy feels outdated. We've created a generation that preaches vulnerability but practices vanity. We wear our healing as identity badges, forgetting that real healing doesn't demand attention. It creates quiet transformation. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote about the Übermensch, the overman, someone who transcends social conditioning and becomes their highest self. But the self-love era misunderstood him. Instead of transcending ego, we've inflated it. Instead of seeking freedom from external validation, we've found new ways to demand it. Today's self-love looks less like Nietzsche's mastery of self and more like Narcissus staring into his reflection, falling in love with an illusion of depth that isn't real. The mirror became the mentor, the caption became the confession, and the follower count became the self-worth scale. We are so obsessed with becoming our best selves that we've forgotten how to simply be. And this has consequences, especially in relationships, because when you're addicted to your own image, no one else can ever be enough. You start seeing people not as mirrors, but as threats. You dismiss every argument as toxic energy. You label every discomfort as a red flag. You call it standards, but it's actually avoidance. Self-love has become an excuse to never face the parts of yourself that need accountability. It's ironic. We talk about healing, but what we're really doing is running away from growth. Because growth isn't glamorous, it's humbling, it's messy. It requires you to admit that you're not always right, and that's something the self-love cult can't stand. Let's get brutally honest. Self-love isn't supposed to make you more special. It's supposed to make you more peaceful within yourself. It's not about falling in love with your reflection. It's about making peace with your flaws, your mistakes, and your contradictions. It's not about cutting off negative people every time you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it's about staying, listening, and growing. Real self-love is not rebellion. It's responsibility. But in this generation of emotional independence, we've mistaken isolation for strength. We say, I don't need anyone. We say, I'm all I have. And while that sounds empowering, it's actually heartbreaking, because what it really means is, I've stopped believing people can love me safely. In clinical psychology, there's something called defensive autonomy. It's when a person becomes so afraid of rejection that they glorify independence as their identity. They convince themselves they're free, but really, they're just lonely in a more sophisticated way. This is the dark underbelly of the self-love movement. It preaches freedom, but feeds avoidance. It praises independence, but fears intimacy. It promotes healing, but denies humility. And the worst part? It keeps you stuck, because you can't heal what you've renamed as empowerment. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The self-love narrative has become the perfect disguise for the unconscious ego. We call it boundaries. We call it vibe protection. But sometimes it's just fear dressed as enlightenment. We've stopped asking the most important question. Is my self-love making me softer or colder? Is it making me wiser or more defensive? Is it making me free or just harder to reach? Because real self-love, the kind that no one claps for, happens in silence. It happens when you choose empathy over pride, when you apologize, even though your ego doesn't want to, when you forgive because you understand, not because you forget. That's what healing looks like when it's real. It's not about perfection, it's about peace. If Narcissus had looked at his reflection and seen himself, his pain, his longing, his humanity, he might have lived, but he fell in love with the surface, just like we have. And maybe that's the tragedy of this era. We've learned to adore our own reflection, but forgotten how to connect with our own soul. If this video made you think, don't scroll away. Like, share, and subscribe right now. Because the more people understand this truth, the fewer of us will live in illusions disguised as empowerment. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's one lie about self-love you've noticed in our generation? Let's expose this together, because awareness is the first step to healing. And remember, you don't have to love yourself loudly. You just have to love yourself honestly. Maybe the goal was never to fall in love with yourself. Maybe it was to finally stop running from the parts of you that still need love. Thank you for watching. Take care. See you next time.